Good morning.
Good morning.
It's very unfortunate that two families are here today. What I do want to say is there have been situations that I've been in that I have walked away from due to violence. I wasn't raised that way. I wasn't raised in a household with a guy putting their hands on a woman. So there was a lot of times where I had to walk away from a situation other than being left from a situation. So I do regret, and I do think about it every day, that I wasn't able to help him, that I wasn't able to call the police because I panicked. I walked away from a situation that was very, 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 it was just a lot. It was a lot for me to deal with, and I truly am very, very sorry for what happened to George. Me and George had an up and down relationship. It was good, it was bad, it was not always perfect, but I am a person that is a loving and caring person. And one thing about me, I'm not a person that's going to hurt you for no reason, or I'm not a type of person that's just going to just bully you or just put you in harm's way.
This is Diamond Vaden, a 32-year-old woman from Cleveland, Ohio, standing in a courtroom looking calm and put together like she did not just plead guilty to killing her boyfriend, George Cox Jr., leaving him to bleed out on the floor and then having his body dumped in a river. While her boyfriend was still alive and bleeding, she was not calling for help. She was on her phone searching Google to see if he was going to make it. And the most disturbing part of this whole story is not the stabbing, and it is not the Google search. The most disturbing part is who she texted next. Keep watching, because this one will mess with your head. So before we get into what happened that night in October 2024, let us talk about the two people at the center of this story, because you need to understand who George Cox Jr. actually was before you can understand the full weight of what was done to him.
I'm Chaplain Candace, C-A-N-D-I-C-E, Amos. Your Honor, I would also like to thank everyone, and I would like to read my statement because I would like to be very clear about my nephew and how I loved him. And I would never understand why Diamond Vaden murdered my nephew and tossed his body out like garbage. We will never recover from our loss. He was not garbage. He was a son, a grandson, a brother, an uncle, a nephew, a cousin, a friend, and certainly not last, a father. So many functions, so many responsibilities and relationships to so many people who loved him. His daughter will never know her father. His father and mother will no longer be able to touch him and love him like parents should. His siblings will no longer be able to spend time with him. Many of the relatives and friends will not be able to talk to him. He is someone that the world will not get to know because Miss Diamond murdered him in cold blood. June had hopes and dreams for his adulthood like every other young person. We know people in our history that took more time to flourish life, like Tyler Perry, example, who had a rough childhood and a young adult life. But he succeeded, and he is the first African American to own a major film production studio. One of my favorite memories of June was when he was a young child playing, and we had such great hopes for him. Because of her careless attitude and her murder, she literally threw him away. The tragedy here is that she snatched away his future at a young age of 32, before he had a time to reach his full potential. June also was my first nephew by blood. As I remember June as a young child running around playing with his siblings and cousins at family cookouts, parties, and family reunions. I remember one holiday particularly, when he was a young child. He and his mother and his siblings spent Christmas Eve night at my house. We played games, watched Christmas movies, and had so much fun, Your Honor. Then early Christmas morning, we rose around 5 a.m., sat in our PJs around the Christmas tree, opening gifts and sipping hot chocolate and coffee. When June helped to prepare And we also had pancakes which June helped to prepare. And this was the first time he had made pancakes from scratch. I remember the look in his young eyes, realizing that he could create something from scratch.
George Anthony Cox Jr. went by June or Junebug to everybody who knew and loved him. He was born on October 6, 1992 in Cleveland, Ohio, the first child of George Cox Sr. and Sonia Calloway. His family talks about him as the kind of person who could walk into any room full of strangers and leave with everybody feeling like they had known him their whole lives, always joking and making noise. He had a daughter named Gianna, born in 2018, and from everything his family says, that little girl was the center of his whole world. His aunt, Chaplain Candace Amos, shared a story about the Christmas right before he died, where June came to her house with 2 big bags of toys for Gianna, asking her to hide them so his daughter would not find them before Christmas morning. He wanted Gianna to feel the same excitement and magic he used to feel opening gifts as a kid, and he went out of his way to make sure she got that experience. He was not just a good father either. He had worked his way up to a transportation supervisor role at a care facility for elderly people in Beechwood, Ohio, had earned certifications in basic information technology and customer service, and his family says he was still figuring out his full potential when all of this happened. He was 32 years old. Now, let us talk about Diamond Vaden. She and George had been dating on and off for about 4 years, the kind of relationship where people keep breaking up and getting back together, and everybody around them can see it is not working, but neither person can fully let go.
I appreciate you being here today and to finding the courage to come forward and talk about this. All right. Thank you very much. Good morning. Could you please let me know what your name is?
My name is Matt.
And how do you spell your last name?
Authority.
Thank you. What would you like to say?
First of all, I'd like to say thank you, Jesus. And I'd like to thank the detective and all the officers that worked so diligently to find my nephew and bring this to the courts. George Cox Jr. was my first nephew, the very first. I have no children. He was like a child to me, even though he had his parents. But the joy that I used to have with him since a little child till he was grown. And last time I saw him was on my birthday, the day, July 24, 2024. This is very upsetting to me. There is no amount of time that this person could get to bring back my nephew. That person will have family to come and visit her. I'll never see my nephew again, ever. He has a daughter that she will never, probably won't even remember her father. She's only 8 years old. And Your Honor, for somebody to do what they did to my nephew, it wouldn't surprise me if they have done this before. How can somebody do something so terrible? And it could have been avoided. It could have been avoided. And I'm angry, Your Honor. I'm very, very upset. This has tore our family up tremendous, so bad. So bad. And it's just so heartbreaking. And it's hard for me to stand up here and be respectful, which I am trying to do, because I was raised that way. But I want to say so many things, Your Honor, and I'm asking, I'm begging you to supersede whatever plea deal that you gave this person. So please dig down in your heart and do what's right for our family. Just please. There is a child that's involved that will never see her father again, ever. And I'm very angry. Your Honor. And like I said, I'm trying to be very respectful. And I thank you for this opportunity to speak for you and express my
Thank you very much. I appreciate all of your words.
They were sharing an apartment near Bosworth Road and Peony Avenue in Cleveland when things finally fell apart in the worst possible way. And before any of this happened, Diamond was not exactly a stranger to trouble. Court records from Cuyahoga County show she already had prior criminal convictions for drug-related and weapons-related offenses before this case, which matters because it comes back around later. Now here is where things go from a complicated relationship to something nobody could have prepared for. On or around October 18, 2024, Diamond and George got into a fight inside that apartment. Nobody has publicly released what the argument was actually about. All that is confirmed is that it turned violent, and at some point during that fight, Diamond Vaden pulled out her phone and typed a question into Google. She searched, "What are the chances to survive in real life if you get stabbed in the abdomen multiple times?" That is what she told the judge, that she was so scared and confused that she could not call for help. But she had enough calm to open a browser, type a full sentence about survival odds after a stab wound, wait for results, and read them. Those people took George's body, wrapped it in a bed sheet from the apartment, tied it up with marine rope, put it in a car, drove over an hour and 15 minutes away, and dumped him in the Huron River. No charges were ever filed against those individuals. And after all of that, Diamond Vaden packed her things, moved out of the apartment, found herself a new boyfriend named Emmanuel McQueen Jr., moved in with him, and kept living her life like none of it happened. George Cox Jr.'s family started getting worried not long after October 19, 2024. That was the last day anyone heard from him, one day after the stabbing, and then nothing. His family kept trying, and the silence kept growing, and by the time they couldn't take it anymore, they went to the police. On November 8, 2024, they filed a missing person report with the Cleveland Division of Police. 3 weeks of silence had passed since that night in the apartment.
So far, police have not been able to solve a body washed up in a river, and police are telling us this does not look like an accident. But no one has come forward to ID the potential victim. But now a way the police believe you can help in making an ID. Catherine Huntley here now, live with this story.
Back on May 16th, a kayaker found a body in a Huron River marsh. That body remains unidentified. So now the sheriff's office is hoping the public will be able to identify some of the tattoos on that body. Take a good look. These are some possibly recognizable tattoos on the Erie County John Doe. Law enforcement is hoping someone might know who or what organizations they belong to.
Study the tattoos, talk to people, anybody that does tattoos or anybody that has knowledge of gangs within Toledo to Cleveland, give us a call. We'd be more than happy to listen to you.
Police say the man was 5 feet 6 inches tall, black, around 160 pounds, with dark facial hair and around 20 to mid-30s in age. The body was found just south of the Route 2 bridge in the Huron River. They don't know the cause of death yet, but police say it is suspicious. He was found in a fitted bedsheet tied around the ankles with marine-style rope.
Definitely deemed suspicious based on how we discovered the body, the sheets.
They also aren't sure how long the body was in the water. Could be several weeks to months. Because of that, the body was in very poor condition, so they need the public's help. Once they know who it is, they can work backwards to find out how he died and who was involved. They are hoping it all starts with understanding these tattoos.
We've kind of narrowed it down to specific organizations that this individual may have been involved with, but that's to be determined yet. So most important part is getting the identification so we can have closure for the family.
George's father, George Cox Sr., shared his location with his son at all times. That was just how they did things, father and son always knowing where the other one was. So he already knew where to start looking. Cleveland police went to the apartment on Bosworth Road for a wellness check, and what they found was an apartment that had been almost completely emptied out. Barely any furniture, very little left behind, except for one thing. There was blood visible on the floor. Diamond had already moved out by then. Detectives came back with luminol, which is a chemical spray that glows when it touches blood, even after someone has tried to clean it up. With that, detectives went to find Diamond Vaden and talk to her. She told them she had never even been inside that apartment. But while officers were at her new place, they spotted a pair of boots that had what looked like blood on them. Diamond tried to say the boots were not even hers, that they belonged to George. Police took the boots anyway, tested the blood, and the DNA matched George. So now she had his blood in her new home, in an apartment she claimed she had never been to.
Back in November last year up in Erie County, Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio, we did a call to action for George Cox Jr. And from there, it just kind of went quiet. For those that are not familiar with this story, back on November the 8th last year, George Cox Jr. was reported missing by his family members because they last communicated with him October the 19th. The police went over to his apartment, did a wellness check. That's where he shared an apartment with his girlfriend. Her name is Diamond Vaden. And when the officers got there, they noticed that the apartment was vacant. It had little to no furniture in that apartment. It's like they just up and left. And they also found what appeared to be red body fluid on the floor. Now, they tested that red body fluid, and they confirmed that it was George Cox Jr.'s red body fluid. And they also saw where Diamond was no longer living at the residence. She left. And at that time, too, we said, the milk stinks and the water stinks. Why would the girlfriend just up and just leave and move to California? Then we jump ahead to May of this year, May 15th of this year. That was when two people were kayaking on the Huron River in Erie County, and they discovered a body that had been bound with a rope and wrapped in a fitted bed sheet. Now, at that time, the police said, we need to identify this body. Then we can work backwards from there to find out who this is and what happened. That's when they tested the red body fluid on the sheets that he was found in, and it matched George Cox Jr. And they also found evidence on his phone, and it linked to the crime with Diamond. And that right there is when the hunt was on. July the 21st is when Diamond was arrested at her new residence that she shared with another guy named Emmanuel McQueen Jr. Now, at first, in the beginning, we thought it was two other guys that she possibly was with and something that happened to George Cox Jr., but it was this guy right here, McQueen Jr. Now, out of all the evidence that they found on the phone, all the stuff that was located and everything, that's when they tied Diamond and the McQueen Jr. guy to this whole crime. So she was indicted on July the 25th on unalive. Yeah, she had 2 counts of felonious assault, tampering with evidence, gross abuse of a corpse, and having weapons under a disability. And then McQueen, he was indicted on 1 count of having weapons under a disability. I'm not for sure what all that really means. But I see it like this. She wanted what George Cox Jr. had, but she didn't want him. She got what she wanted, then all of a sudden she wanted to get rid of him. And why couldn't you just leave? Why steal something that doesn't belong to you? His life. You're going to get life in prison, under the jail where the rebar is, both of y'all.
Around the same time, George's brother Jamari sat down with Diamond and secretly recorded the conversation. Over 11 minutes of him asking her point blank, "Where is my brother?" And every time he pushed her, she denied it, got angry, acted like she was the one being disrespected for even being asked. She kept that performance going for the entire conversation, knowing full well that George's body was already in a river somewhere. Meanwhile, George Cox Sr. was driving down from his home in Farmington Hills, Michigan, to Cleveland over and over again for 7 months straight, 26 trips total, trying to get answers and find his son. Every single time he made that drive, he passed over the Huron River, and he had no idea his son was already there. Then, on May 15, 2025, 7 months after George was killed, 2 people who were out kayaking on the Huron River in Erie County, Ohio, came across something in a shallow, marshy area near the State Route 2 bridge. A body, wrapped in a sheet, tied up with rope, and badly decomposed from months in the water. They called the police right away. The Erie County Sheriff's Office came out and pulled the body from the river. The remains were transported to the Lucas County Coroner's Office for an autopsy. The decomposition was so bad that the medical examiner could not officially state a cause of death, but the report noted that the way the body was hidden and disposed of pointed strongly toward a violent, non-natural death. Investigators were able to identify the body, first through tattoos they could still make out on the decomposed skin, and then confirmed through DNA testing that this was George. And the fitted bedsheet he was wrapped in matched the sheets from the apartment where his blood had been found. Everything was pointing back to that apartment, and everything in that apartment pointed back to Diamond Vaden.
So, you said to the court that it was a lot. You said that you were truly very sorry for what happened to George. What happened to George?
George died. So, like my lawyer told me, she didn't want me to make it about me, but I feel that it would be better if I was to...
How did he die? What happened?
He was beat up and he was stabbed.
By?
By
Did you do this Google search? Asking if somebody was stabbed in the abdomen, how long it would take them to survive? Was he alive after you had stabbed him in the abdomen? And he was bleeding out? So you had an opportunity to call 911 on his behalf. The detective said that there's blood all over the house. Did he go to different areas of the house while he was bleeding? Was he unable to get to the phone? And why was that?
he was kind of just like in shock, I guess. He kept falling, and I was basically trying to stop him from moving so I can help him.
Did he want to leave the house? Did he ask you to call for help?
He just told me to save him. I tried to save him.
And
Now, here is the part that takes this from a terrible crime to something that tells you exactly who you are dealing with. On that same day, May 15th, 2025, the day George Cox Jr.'s body was pulled out of that river, Diamond Vaden sent a text message to her boyfriend, Emmanuel McQueen Jr. Whether she knew that George's body had specifically been found that day or not, she still sent that message. She still chose to use that exact word, missing. And she was the only person on Earth who knew exactly what missing had meant for the last 7 months. On July 21st, 2025, Cleveland police arrested Diamond Vaden at the home she shared with McQueen. During the arrest, they found a gun in the house. Because of her old criminal convictions, she was not legally allowed to have a firearm, and neither was McQueen, so both of them caught charges for that. 4 days later, on July 25, 2025, Cuyahoga County Prosecutor Michael O'Malley announced that a grand jury had formally indicted Diamond Vaden on 2 counts of murder, 2 counts of felonious assault, tampering with evidence, gross abuse of a corpse, and having a weapon while under disability.
I just, whatever Jordan wanted me to do, that's what I did.
he asked you what happened to his son?
He asked me, but it really wasn't.
You lied to him? What he said earlier was true?
No.
Well, did you tell him I would never do anything to your son? What did you say to him when he asked you where his son was?
I kind of was still way mentally not all the way there.
I didn't ask that. I asked, what did you say to him?
I didn't know.
You said you didn't know. Were there other family members that asked you?
Yeah.
Who would that have been?
Aunt?
And what did you tell her?
No,
You said what to her?
I didn't know.
Anyone else?
I didn't know what happened.
Yeah, how many times would you have said that to his family members?
Twice.
Did people in your family ask you?
No.
O'Malley's statement to the press was direct. Quote, George Cox Jr.'s family has waited for answers, and today they are one step closer to justice. Fortunately for his family and the state of Ohio, CDPH homicide detectives are well-trained and smarter than Diamond Vaden thinks. End quote. On March 11, 2026, Diamond Vaden walked into Cuyahoga County Common Pleas Court before Judge Richard Bell and entered a guilty plea. The original murder charges had been reduced through a deal with prosecutors. She pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter, felonious assault, and gross abuse of a corpse, and the agreed sentencing range was between 14 and 20 years. The prosecution was standing at that podium asking for the maximum they could get. Before the judge said a word about the actual sentence, the Cox family had their turn to speak, and they did not hold back. George's mother, Sonia Calloway, was the first to address the court, and she kept her words simple and straight to the point. His aunt, Lynette Ford, who talked about George being her first and only nephew and the closest thing she had to a child of her own, stood up and looked straight at Diamond. Chaplain Candace Amos, another one of George's aunts and a minister, read her statement out loud. She talked about the time he made pancakes from scratch as a kid and was so proud of himself that she nicknamed him the Pancake King, and he never wanted to use a box mix again. She talked about all the things he would never get to do with his daughter, and then, being a woman of faith, she said something that most people in that room probably could not have managed. Then George Cox Sr. stepped up to the podium. He handed the judge a photograph of his son's remains, what was left of George after 7 months in that river. He talked about walking into the morgue and having to see his firstborn child looking like that. After the family spoke, Cleveland Police Detective Kevin Callahan walked up to address the court. This man had been a police officer for 30 years, and for 15 of those years he worked nothing but missing persons cases. He had sat through plenty of murder trials and sentencing hearings in his career, but he had never once stood up to make a personal statement at a sentencing in all of that time. This case was the first.
Go ahead.
This situation is very traumatizing for me, but I'm still remorseful and I still regret the day that it happened. I think about it every day, and mentally, I'll never forget.
I've reviewed the counsel's sentencing memorandum as well. As to the involuntary manslaughter, felony to the first degree, the court will sentence you to a period of 11 years. That is the maximum sentence on that count. This will be the qualifying offense. You are to serve a minimum prison term of 19 years and 7 months with an indefinite prison term of 5.5 years. For the maximum prison term, then, I believe 25.2 years, or 25, I should say 25 years, 2 months. The court will ensure that the math is appropriate. Mr. Carson.
He explained that when someone is murdered and the body is found right away, the family at least gets to know. They are devastated, but they can start grieving. When someone is killed and their body is hidden, the family spends every single day not knowing if their person is dead or alive, holding on to hope that gets more painful the longer it goes on. Diamond's cover-up cost the Cox family 7 extra months of that kind of pain, and Detective Callahan asked the judge to make sure those 7 months were counted in whatever sentence she received. Then it was Diamond's turn to speak. She stood up, calm, well-dressed, and told the court she was a loving and caring person who was sorry for everything. She claimed that she thought about George every day and did not feel safe in that relationship and regretted not calling the police. Then the judge started asking her questions and the mask started slipping. The judge made her finish that sentence. He was not going to let her sit in that courtroom and talk about how sorry she was without saying exactly what she was sorry for. He took her through every part of it after that. The Google search while George was bleeding, the blood all over the apartment, George begging him to save him, why she let him die, how the body got moved, the text message. For the text she sent her new boyfriend that day, she tried to explain it away as just checking on him because he was not answering her phone calls. The judge heard her out, and then he gave his sentence. 11 years for the involuntary manslaughter, the maximum available for that charge, 8 years for felonious assault to run back-to-back with the first count, 7 months for gross abuse of a corpse, also consecutive. The total came to 19 years and 7 months as the minimum, with a possible maximum of 25 years and 2 months under Ohio's sentencing laws. Diamond Vaden sat there stone-faced through all of it. George Cox Jr. was 32 years old, and the last thing he ever said to the woman he trusted with his life was "save me," and she let him die on that floor anyway. Do you think Diamond felt any remorse at all? Let me know in the comments section. Also, click on one of the cards on your screen to see more videos like this. See you in the next one.